Thank
close
you for Papa, thank you for this day, Lord. Thank you for our health. Thank you for bringing us together. Guard our thoughts, our minds, our words as we go through the podcast today. We love you. We praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Hello. We are so glad to have you on the podcast today. I am Jen. I am your host.
I'm Kelsey.
I'm Megan.
And I am Mia.
We are talking about burnout today. Not the kind that you do in the parking lot at the high school. But burnout, like what is that? As yoga instructors, as people living in life, how do we know we don't want it? How do we avoid it? What do we do when we find ourselves in it? Yeah. So I don't know. We didn't plan this. Who wants to start talking about it? I'm gonna not be the person that is way too busy in life starting the conversation about burnout.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at burnout.
Go on.
I'm pretty good. I get a
Go
gold
on.
star. I've gotten gold stars for burnout, I think, in life. Trying to not do that so much.
Yeah, burnout. I was thinking about this as I was like setting up for the podcast, and I had this revelation where I realized that I get into this like burnout situation when I'm trying to take full control and not just sit and rest and trust that God's got it. I'm like trying to just take control of the thing and do the thing and hustle the thing. And yeah, so that was an interesting little revelation.
That's got me thinking. I usually counsel new instructors like week 12, week 13, when they're just about to graduate, to only teach as much as you practice. Because instructors, especially new instructors, are very excited. And when they start getting offered classes, or even if they haven't been offered classes, if classes come up and they'll volunteer for them, I would not teach over 6 classes. I wouldn't let instructors teach over 6. They would want to teach 10, 12, 15 classes a week. I know of somebody right now, a whole yoga instructor, who's teaching 20 hours, 20 classes a week. Now you consider you have to prep for those classes. That starts to get limited. You definitely aren't practicing that much, and you're just running from job to job to job to job. And that can really cause burnout. So back to your point of taking care of yourself, if you're practicing 6 hours a week, teach 6 hours a week. If you're practicing 4 hours a week, teach 4 hours a week. Because you've got an hour in prep, hopefully, if you're doing right by your students, and drive time, and time before the class and after the class. So for a 1 hour class, it's really probably 3 hours. And scene.
Good.
Some wisdom right there.
I came across a quote this week earlier that Megan, it kind of talks to what you just said, and it says it says, "Never once did the serpent say to Eve, 'I want to be your master.' The shift in commitment is never from Christ to evil. It's always from Christ to self. And instead of his will, self-interest rules, and what I want begins to reign. And that is the essence of sin." And I was like, man, like, I think we like to portray this like the good guy and the bad guy. Not that there isn't a good guy and a bad guy, but I think, I don't know, that I had to like sit with that. I was like, oh, I have to read that again. I need to think about that again. But what struck me about it was just this, when I become so consumed with what you're saying, Megan, like with, I want to control the situation, or what I want, how I want things to go, how I want to be perceived, what I want things to look like, the boxes I want to check, the house I want to run, the kids I want to raise, the marriage I want to have, the job I want to have, like you name it, whatever it is, when that becomes priority over what God's will is for any of that, any and all of that, then I have placed myself above him in life. So it was an interestingly timed quote, to get my wheels turning, because I don't like to think of that as a sin. I would prefer to think of that as just being really hardworking, and just being ambitious and just trying to do good things in the world. But just this, like, I don't know, for me, it was this reminder of like, okay, but like, whose will is that? It might be good. Just because it's good doesn't mean it's right. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it's bad. Like, we have to kind of ask that question, take that pause to be like, is this mine? Is this God's? What does God want to do here? So I don't know if that.
Well, I think this sort of bookends our last conversation about Sabbath, because when you were saying that, Jen, I was thinking about in Exodus when twice we're told about how to build the tabernacle, but toward the end, like the last part of Exodus, when he's telling how to build the tabernacle again, first thing Moses is talking about is Sabbath. Sabbath. You know, you're fixing to do hard work that even if it's holy work, which building the tabernacle was, even if it's holy work, Sabbath. Because without Sabbath, there will be burnout.
Well, I think you see that with Jesus, right?
Yeah.
He always took time away. Like he would do these. I think The Chosen did such a beautiful job of depicting this. I think it's in the first season, I want to say. Maybe it's in the second. I can't remember. But it's an episode where it's literally from this one verse. I think it's like in Mark or something. And it literally is like talking about how like the people came to Jesus and he healed them all. Like this, he basically, the way they depicted it is that he spent an entire day healing like this huge queue of people. And at the end of the day, he's exhausted and he goes to his tent and he sleeps and he rests and he's like, he takes time away after he feeds the 5,000 to go pray up on the hill. Like he continually is infusing his life with these rhythms so as not to burn out, I think is the example. I think these two things do go really well together, because without that ritual, it is so easy to burn out. Even if, and I don't say just like, let me find a new word. Even if you are a mom or a stay-at-home dad or a student, right? Like in this season of life where you think like, well, my life isn't that crazy. Like I shouldn't be burning out. And I'm here to tell you, we can get busy being busy and filling our lives with all of the things and burning out on life. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about how so many of us don't think we're burned out or don't think we're stressed. And so we just keep pushing and keep going until, Jen, like you were talking about last week, where your body just quits. Mm-hmm. And God's like, I'm going to make you rest now. And I think one of the ways that we can avoid that, this was something that struck me earlier today. I was like, what do I want to, like, what comes to me with burnout? And it was to look for your tells that you're burning out. So like for me, I notice an uptick in doom scrolling when I'm getting burnt out. Basically, like any mindless numbing activity. So, like just wanting to watch a show and like binge watch a show or doom scroll or not like I don't want to call my friends. I don't want to like go on like I don't want to do the things, do my yoga, do my practices that make me feel better. And that's often an indication to me that I'm getting burned out.
I look at all the yeses. You know, we've seen it, and Jen can testify to this with yoga instructors, holy yoga instructors, where they're saying yeses to all the good things. They're saying yeses to great things, and they're doing and doing and doing and doing and doing, and then they start to think, "Am I getting any return? Am I, you know?" And then what was a get to becomes a grudge, and they get burnt out. And what it was too many yeses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You know,
that's I think so I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking when I typed in our topic for this week, but I typed in burnout and I also typed in liminal space. And so I confused some people maybe. Sorry about that. But then I was like, why did I put both of those things there when I was doing this? And this is I think why maybe my brain put those things. I just, if you guys could just get inside my head and figure out what I'm thinking, then it would just make life easier because sometimes words are hard.
what my husband
Um,
said. Yeah.
this is I think that it's so true. We see it with our instructors all the time. I am guilty of it in my own life. Like I think sometimes we feel God calling us to something. We're like, yes, like the Lord has brought me out of something, and I know He is bringing me to this next thing. Like I know He's called me to do, insert whatever it is that He's called you to do, right? But there's a journey to get there, right? Like He rarely just picks us up and sets us down in our promised land. We the Israelites wandered for 40 years. Like I'm going to hope it doesn't take 40 years. But there's this process, and I think sometimes there can be this kind of liminal space, if you will, this place of like the not yet, the like almost there, the not ready, the like in between, where it is uncomfortable because we know what we came from and we can sense what we're going to. Like our heart is yearning for the thing that we're going to, but we're just not there yet. And it's uncomfortable, right? Like it's sticky. It's uncomfortable. And I think we don't like being uncomfortable. And so we think, well, what can I do to fix it?
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to not get uncomfortable? Let me do something to hurry along my healing. Let me do something to hurry along what God's calling me to. Like perhaps God needs me to lead a Bible study or teach an extra class or volunteer to do XYZ or start a nonprofit or like whatever it is. And it's not that those things are bad, right? Like they're good things. But are they the thing that God's called us to? Are they stepping us down the path closer to what He's called us to? Or are they something that's just good, but is not the great thing that God has for us? And I think that for me, at least, and personally, that's when I experience burnout the most in life, is when I am busy doing the things to avoid the uncomfortable. I don't want to be uncomfortable, so I start putting stuff into it, and then I'm like, wow, I'm so tired. Like I don't want, you know what? I don't want to do any of this anymore. I must have misunderstood God. Like maybe this just isn't for me. This is for somebody else. I'm all the things that lead to burnout, when it's like, I feel like God maybe is up there looking out like, baby girl, I didn't ever tell you to do all those things. You didn't ask. You didn't
Jen,
ask.
dovetail that into what you're favorite thing that you say that I love about all the little things. The devil loves when we're doing all the little things.
Yeah. Yeah. Just this, like, this, I think that, like, the devil, our enemy, whatever name you want to put on that, I think he is very content with the million good things that we stack our life full of. I think about my husband's active duty military, and he was deployed several years ago. His first deployment was right after our firstborn was born. And I remember Skyping with him. We didn't have FaceTime back then, but remember Skyping with him, or Zoom, I don't think. But I could hear in the background, like, it sounded like explosions. And I was like, what is happening? And he is like, oh, they're just mortars. They're just mortar bombs, mortar stuff. Like, it's not a big deal. And I was like, I'm so confused right now. And he was like, they're like these things that, like, people put together. They're like forks and, like, clay and, like, just stuff that they, like, mold together, and then they launch them over the base wall. And it's just a nuisance. He's like, it very rarely actually hurts anybody, but it, like, makes a mess. We have to clean it up. It'll just, like, it'll damage buildings sometimes. When they get really excessive, they give a warning and we, like, all go inside. But it's not, you don't need to be concerned about it. It's not actually hurting anything. And he was like, if you hear this siren goes off, that means there's, like, an air raid coming, and that you should be worried about. And so it was this, like, that it, by the way, none of that helped me as my husband was sitting in a war zone. None of it made me feel any better. The fact that he was comfortable with people throwing forks at him, didn't help. But
Fork bombs, not just forks, fork bombs.
So it was this like realization of, like, that. I think that is so often how we are to the enemy, right? Like, our good things that are good they're kind of like little mortar bombs going across the wall at the enemy. They're like, oh, I did this, and oh, I did that. And I think, Satan's probably like, well, that's a nuisance, but, like, it's not really hurting my cause. But, like, when we get a hold of the one thing that God has called us to in life, like, our thing that, like, in your gut, this is what God's called me to be. This is what God's called me to do. This is who I am in Christ. Like, when we get a hold of that great thing, like, now he's, like, shaking in his boots. That's the air raids going off, So I just think we get really distracted
and burnt out.
And we're burnt out because we're so busy, and it's good. Like,
and he's fine with that. He's fine with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're leading the Sunday school class. We're like, all the things, right? We're volunteering. We're doing this. We're adding all the exciting things. They're good. They're not bad. They're good. They're, like, under the banner of the church and Jesus and worship, and they are equally as damaging to our calling.
Yeah.
Well, and the unfortunate thing is that in a lot of faith cultures, there is some amount of, sorry, hair in my eyeballs. There's some amount of guilt that can come around not serving or not volunteering or not being involved in the traditional capacity. Because I know for me, there was a time where, like, I felt a lot of guilt for not saying yes to all the things. But I also knew that if I wanted to serve in the areas I was serving well, and if I wanted to still have capacity for my home and my family and the work I was doing at the time, that I needed to have boundaries. And I think boundaries are so tricky, and they're so easily judged by others.
Mm-hmm.
and it can make other people uncomfortable. And we think, well, I would rather be uncomfortable and inconvenienced than making somebody else uncomfortable and inconveniencing them. And that math equation doesn't math. It doesn't work out.
But if you think about the seeds that fall, and the seed that falls and grows real fast and then dies real fast, we do this to our newbies in church. And like I was saying, as far as I've seen it with yoga instructors, where they say yes to all the things, Kelsey, and then they burn out on church, on religion, on faith, rather than, I think the lesson that I'm hearing in all of this today is being really discriminating with our yes. Let your yes be your yes, your no be your no, and honor other people's. Encourage, if somebody tells you no, thank you. Encourage them for saying no, because it is hard to say no. That's probably the hardest sentence to say is no. But something that really helped me, although I really don't have a problem with no, but what really helped me was my no makes way for somebody else's yes.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. When you talk about doing, all I think about is like doing to avoid the thing that God has called me to.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I believe God's called me to do this certain thing with my yoga instructor training, but like to do that thing, like that's scary. So I don't want to do that thing. So I'm just going to keep doing the easy and the comfortable and the nice thing. And I didn't realize that until Jen was talking. So
Hey,
I'm going to have to go talk to God about it. But
Hey, Jonah.
it's just, it's easier to just do the comfortable and avoid. Yeah.
Okay, here's where I'm going to use... Okay, so I was the one who Jen confused because I was the one who was thinking about liminal space. But this is actually a beautiful bow between liminal space and...
Explain
Burnout.
what liminal space is first.
That's what I was just going to do. Okay, so liminal space. When I first heard Brooke Boone, now Beardall, talk about... Did I say that right? Beardall? Beardall. Okay, excellent. Basically, when I first heard her talk about it, she described it as the space between spaces and or the space of I would rather not. And the teaching she gave to go with it was Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. And he was between his life and the cross, between this life and the next, between what was comfortable and known and the uncomfortable thing, death. And he was going, I would rather not do this. Like, I don't want to be in this position. And it made me think of the Israelites, per our conversation last, when we were talking about Sabbath, and how they were in the desert just whining and complaining for 40 years. Like, they were in this massive liminal space, just like angsty about it. And what came up for me is that liminal space can be really dangerous territory if we don't remember. So if we forget who God is and what he called us to and like trust in that thing, then it can be a really fertile place for, like Jen was saying, darkness, distraction, fear. Like Jesus could have in that moment, he was God. He could have been like, nah, dude, I'm not doing it. Like, I've got people I love. I really like my life. Like, I remember when I came to my yoga teacher training for Holy Yoga, sitting in the very first meditation, like, and starting to feel the feelings. I should preface this by saying I was not necessarily a believer going to a believer Jesus camp. And I'm sitting in the first meditation, starting to feel the feelings, yelling at God on my insides. Like, no, you will not F up my life. I like my life. And it goes back to the thing of like, in order to find your life, you must lose it. In order to like get to the promised land, you have to go through the uncomfortable. In order to not burn out, you need to seek, refuge, rest, time away with God, like all these things. And it makes me feel like we're like making one of those, like Sherlock Holmes maps on a wall. Like we have the center idea and then we've got like the strings coming from all these different things to it. And they do actually connect. Like it's a little tangential, maybe feeling to the listeners, but I would encourage you just to explore it for yourselves because it does, as you go through it, it does start to make more sense of things being connected to burnout that we don't think are connected to burnout.
I looked up the definition in Latin. Limina is threshold. But I will say when I first learned about liminal space, it was so comforting to me because it was a space Megan used to try to race out of, try to get, compare it to a yin class. I don't want to be there. But once I learned that what liminal space was, that it was a space to stay in, there is something in that space, and he will call us out of it when it's time to be called out of it. But while there, to quit the quest to leave it,
That's a good word.
To stay in it.
Another thought that I have, Kelsey, you were talking
thread.
about, similar, but I think when I think about like, this all sounds great. I am a person that struggles with burnout. I can say all the things I just said, and still I am a person that struggles with that. Something that I think we see in our culture a lot is that your life is different than mine. Just like your burnout might look different than mine, your capacity looks different than mine. Your calling is different than mine. Everything about you is different, right? So I think it's really easy for someone to it's really easy for me to look at somebody that has a slower pace of life than I do, or someone that takes retreat every month and think, probably judge them a little bit, think they don't have burnout. Like they got this Sabbath thing down. They're not burning out. They're doing it really well, and I'm not. And it is also probably the same way for somebody to look at a life that is very busy and full of activity and full of all the things and say that person is going to burn out. That person is doing too much. That person needs to rest. And so I think we're really good at looking at other people and sometimes like speaking that into them. Like I have people in my life that can say to me, "Hey Jen, like when are you making time for yourself? Like when's the last time that you didn't do something for like when's the last?" I have people in my life that I know, they know me. They know that I am a doer. I am energized by doing things. It is part of how God created me. I don't want to feel I don't want to feel guilty from religious circles or the church that I'm not holy enough because I'm not resting enough and I'm too busy and I'm all of this. God, there are aspects of who I am and how I function that God made me to do differently than even my husband does, right?
Yes and amen.
It doesn't mean that I don't need to rest. But this idea of like, I don't think we get to tell other people when they need to rest, when they need to Sabbath, when they're burnt out. I think we have to be careful there. I guess I should say that. Like, I think there are people in lives where we can speak into them. We can encourage them. Our close people, close community. The people that know me and know my heart can tell me, that's a lot, Jen. And I need those people. But I think there's a fine line, right? Of just because my life doesn't look like yours doesn't mean that I am any closer or further away from burnout. I've known plenty of people that I feel like have, on the outside, it looks like they have a pretty slow pace to their life, and yet they're still struggling with those same things. So for me, this is the process I'm working through, because I'm not very good at this. I told you guys that at the beginning. Is asking myself that when I'm in that space of like, this is really uncomfortable, and I'm like, I keep wanting to say yes to things, or when I get to the point where I'm like, you know what, I'm saying no to everything. Like either extreme to me is a red flag, right? Like when I start feeling like I need to do, that's a red flag that, hey, you might be avoiding something, Jen. What are you so afraid of?
Yeah.
Why are you so afraid of getting still right now? And also when I get to the point where I'm like, nothing, I cancel it all, I'm quitting everything, done. Like that is all, both extremes for me. When I start to feel either end of that, it's where do I feel at peace and where do I feel unrest? When I think about, not when everybody else is telling me what I should feel or how I should feel or what they would do if they were me, but like, how is my heart? How is my soul? Where in the depths of my gut do I feel a peace? And where do I feel an unrest? Because if I'm asking the Lord, like, Lord, am I supposed to lay this down? Am I supposed to pick this up? If I ask him, he will show it to me. He's not trying to trick me. Right?
Well,
like,
what I
give
hear
me a
you saying,
peace.
though, is that awareness, and I guess that would be because I know the things that I do when I'm in the red zone. And what I hear you saying is, I know if I'm doing all the yeses or all the nos, it's that awareness
Mm-hmm.
and taking action with, and oh, I see that. That's the thing, is build it. So how do you build the awareness?
Get burnt out
Experience?
enough and you'll know.
Huh?
I don't know
Get
that
burnt
that's
out
true,
enough
Megan.
and you'll know. Yeah, I mean, I guess it varies person to person. It took me a long time to figure it out, so
I think you have to first want to be aware, because I think a lot of people don't. It's easier to stay ignorant and disconnected. But I think what I was hearing Jen say, and Mia in a sense, is it's about, and this is a lesson I'm really continually being brought back to in life right now, is like, what is the intent? Like what heart is behind this action or behind this distraction or this fear or this discontent or this whatever is coming up, right? Like where am I doing from and where am I resting from? Because if either of those things is out of a should or out of a place of force, like we talked about last week, right? Power versus force. Like, where am I operating in? Jen, if you're operating in your power, like if you're in that zone, like get after it. Like that's a gift. But when it shifts down into that force place, like I noticed this in myself the other day. I was trying to make something happen. And it was, what I noticed is I'm trying to make this happen because I'm feeling shame. I'm feeling like I need to fix it.
As soon as you said that, I was like, if it feels like shame, that's
So
it.
good.
I got totally like a shame trigger went off really hard. Something happened where I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to fix this. Like if I'm rushing, that's a pretty big, I'm like, oh, that's an energy I shouldn't be functioning in, or I don't want to be functioning in. Let me put it that way. And so it's like, okay, where am I coming from? Is it striving? Is it rushing? Is it shame? Is it fear? Okay, none of those things are in my power, like power zone. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, look up power versus force. Brooke is teaching on it at the Christian Yoga Conference. Is that what it's called? In October. Expo. It's going to be amazing. I don't really have a bow to that thought, so I'll just pass the ball.
I was gonna say, oh, I lost it. Oh no, it's back. Okay. Um, when I was thinking about this the other day, I was like, it was like the end of the day. I did a lot of work, and I'm like, I'm just gonna like watch The Rookie. I've been binging it because I can't focus because I end up going back to work while I'm watching it. But for a long time, no one explained rest. Like I thought rest was like as long as I'm not doing the thing. So whether I'm like sitting, if I'm scrolling, if I'm, as long as I'm not like working and doing the thing, like I'm resting. But I found out like that's not true. I was still just as tired and just as wore out because I wasn't in the presence of the Lord. I wasn't getting my rest with Him in my quiet time, speaking to Him, letting Him fill me. And it took me a very long time to learn that.
I love that, Megan. And when you said that, I thought about, when we're hungry, we make bad decisions. That you have to fill up. You have to fill up. And what you just said, you might be, air quotes, resting, but you're still exhausted. You're still burnt out because you're actually not pouring.
You're resting, but you're not releasing.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
I think that's a really sneaky form of burnout.
Knocked it over. Huh?
Yeah.
It is
It's a
very
sneaky-
sneaky.
Yeah.
It's a sneaky form of burnout, like spiritual burnout. Like for those of us who believe in that which is greater than us, like our source, the place of ultimate rest, like that place is like such restoration. And it's easy to think like, well, I'm doing my quiet time, but it's just like a thing you check off on your to-do list. I've actually like been struggling with that because I've kind of felt that way for like a few weeks just because like life is really full and there's a lot happening right now. And I'm like, okay, where can I find that place of rest so I don't burn out? Because I know that could be like imminent if I'm not careful. And it's just really like you're saying, Megan, like checking in and getting back with the Lord and going back to that like well of like water, the Psalm 23, like that place of the green pastures and still waters, like that's the place.
My soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I remember the first time I did that after being extremely burnt out and just sitting with the Lord, and I was like, that's all I had to do this whole time. Like I just had to sit with you, Lord. That was it. It was that easy. It's not that easy. It is hard to, be willing and do the thing, but yeah.
I love that.
So I think what we're I feel like we've been a little scattered, but I think like you're saying, Kelsey, earlier, like it strings together. I think the crux of it is like, how do we avoid burnout? How do we heal from burnout? How do we move past it? It's relationship. It is to come back to home base. It's that relationship and that check in with not just ourselves, but to check in with God. What is this? What you want for me? What am I doing? And I think community is a huge part of that. Like, not community that's just gonna should you all over the place.
Yeah.
But community that is not afraid to speak what they see in you, but also to know you well enough to know when to push it, when to not push it, when to just, I personally, I don't need people in my life to try to, I'm going to start thinking they're trying to control me if they just, I don't want them to tell me what to do.
Or make the decision for me.
Right. But I want them to, it's okay for them to give me some reminders. Like it's okay for them to lovingly kind of, hey, when's the last, I have a friend that she'll every once in a while, she'll just ask me she asked me the same question. She's like, when's the last time that you did something for yourself? Like, when's the last time that you rested in your busy schedule? And I don't ever answer her. because normally, but it's like it triggers in me like, oh, I don't actually know what to answer her.
But Jen,
Like,
what came to mind just now when you were saying that was there are some batteries that recharge by being used. You know,
mhm.
they don't recharge by just plugging in. You have to use the thing to make the battery recharge. And that's what, when you were talking, that's what I was thinking about with you. I just had this image of you're the battery that recharges as it's being used.
I still have to go to if I charge my iPhone, they tell you at the phone store, right? Like,
Mhm.
don't let your battery go all the way down and then charge it. Don't plug it into the charger when it's 80%,
Yeah.
right? Like, I feel like you still have to charge it at some point. Like, it still does have to be charged, but I think it's less about, I don't think that the answer is always to do less.
Hmm.
I think that perhaps the answer is to choose better,
Well, and that's
is
what we,
to prioritize what I am spending my time on, because it's not, we're all created differently. Like, we're all going to refuel differently, certainly from the same source, but we're all going to, it's going to look different. So like, I want to say, like, it's okay that your rest, that your Sabbath, that your life looks different than the person sitting next to you. It's okay that it looks different. It's not supposed to look the same. And so when we find ourselves feeling like, well, I need to take a silent retreat because that's what all the people in my life are doing. Well, maybe I do, maybe I don't. I don't know. Maybe I should talk to the Lord about it. Like, maybe I should take their ideas and say, this is what Sally Joe is doing and it's fueling her life. Lord, what would bring me life? What would energize me? How can I experience your refreshment and your renewal? And then stop doing and just listen for him to show you. Like, even in asking that question, I'm telling on myself a little bit. Even in asking that question, it's that liminal space where I'm uncomfortable. Like, I'm asking the question, but I don't, like, do I really want the answer?
Because he might
Like,
tell you to stop.
he might tell me to stop doing the thing. Like, I don't want to
Mhm.
stop doing the thing. So I'm going to ask the question, because then I can check the box that I asked the question. And then I'm going to go do what I think I should do to fix it. Like, I think
Mm.
that pause is important, uh, to llisten.
Mm.
well, okay. We've all done the book of the Rule of Life, right? Remember we read the book, The Rule of Life, and I can remember being so pissed off when it was saying, make your list. Sorry, I know, like, I know people in my group that love the book, and it is a great book. But for me, Jen, where you make the list of all your things, and it was saying that anything over 7 or 8 things you can't do well. And I can remember at the time thinking, well,
Yes, I
it's not
can.
it's not just a matter of
Watch me.
being able to drop a thing. I am a wife, I am a mother, I am a daughter. I cannot drop those things for other things. Yes, it's a great rule of life. It just doesn't fit the season of my life, and I don't want to feel bad about myself for that. It's just, it's you. There's sometimes there are 8 obligations that there's no way to let go of any of those. So it's, to Megan's point earlier, finding a way to resource yourself in that. But
What is this
When I
book?
think,
you can't just drop the things.
I think it
What is
comes
the rule
back
of
to
life? I
that.
don't think I've read it.
No,
Oh,
it was before we knew you, Megan. You
Yeah.
may
you were
borrow
the
my
teacher.
copy.
Okay.
I'm not throwing shade on the book. I'm just saying in that season of my life, I was just like,
Well, I think, Mia, it comes back to the question what of these things I think it's a good practice to like, what are
yeah,
all the things I'm doing in life? What does my day look like? What does my week look like? Why am I so tired? Let me take a step back and look at what am I committed to? Like, I think it's a good practice to like just take that minute. But then where do I feel at peace? Where is the Lord giving me peace about? And where do I feel unrest? If
hmm,
I feel unrest there like that, why do I feel that unrest? Is it because I just don't want to do it? Is it because it's something I want to do and the Lord doesn't want me to do? Is it a good thing? Because I feel like, I think the Lord challenges us sometimes. I do think that the Lord sometimes gives us more than we can
for sure.
handle without him, right? Like we need him. So it's like I can have a lot on my plate. Different seasons, there are going to be seasons where Mia, you've come through them in this last year, right? Like we all have those seasons where it's like I can't put anything else off. I can't there's no more if I say no to something else, like somebody's not going to eat or a toddler's going to run across the street unsupervised or like, there are seasons where we can't. And I think it's the awareness, the acknowledging of it. And then the asking of like, all right, Lord, I have most definitely recently had those seasons of, Lord, there's too much on my plate. And also, I do not feel a peace about saying no to any of it.
Right.
So, Lord, like I'm asking, I feel that it's too much. I feel the tension of I can't keep doing. But also, Lord, like I don't feel like you're releasing me from it. Like I from any of the things. So, okay, you God is the ultimate source of power, so he can do what he wants. So, all right, Lord, you got to get me through this. Like you have to give it to me. You have to give me the strength and the ability and the wisdom and the discernment to do the things that you have brought me here to do because I can't do it.
I
Asking
feel
for
like
more
you have been
capacity.
all over the map on burnout because when you're saying that, Jen, I'm thinking sometimes he brings us to burnout. Yeah.
If that's what it takes to get us to him.
Yeah.
But I do think there is times what you're also saying, Jen, is like sometimes he wants us to depend on him for more capacity. Because to circle back to the very beginning of this, when Megan was talking about like doing it in her own strength, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
like when
Hmm.
she's trying to get control is when burnout happens. But I'm going to tie some metaphors together. If we're plugged into the source that is God, and we can ask him to give us more capacity to get through the season that's demanding more than we have,
Yes.
where you can't like I'm kind of in that place in like the meta of my life where it's like the day to day is fine. Like day to day is pretty normal. I'm raising a 2.5-year-old. She's awesome and crazy and 2.5. So it's like all the things, many feelings in a day. But in the bigger picture of my life, what's going on, there's a lot, and there's a lot out of my control, and there's a lot that feels uncomfortable and scary and difficult and challenging, and it's like a lot of hard stuff. And I'm like, Lord, I don't know that I can climb up this mountain for one more day, but like, I don't have a choice but to keep climbing this mountain. Because if I
Mm-hmm.
stop climbing this mountain, like I might die. Like not literally, but there's just things that like it's a non-negotiable. And so like I need that power source right now. I need his strength, his capacity that I don't have. And then on the other side of it, because there will be an other side, mountains don't just go up forever. There will be the other side. And in that other side, it is then up to me to not just pretend that I need to keep climbing the mountain, but to rest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had a big aha moment when Jen was talking, because y'all, that's when my dad was dying. And Alzheimer's is a long, lingering death. And at the end, that last year, where it's basically a baby again, a child, and you never think you're going to be changing your father's diaper, who is this giant of a man, and he's a child now. And my daily thing, I didn't realize till Jen was just talking about, Lord, I want to do this with a grateful heart. I want to do this joyfully and not have it be drudgery. And if I had let it be drudgery, if I had done it, to Megan's point, in my own strength, I would have burned out hard. And it was hard anyway. But with that daily prayer of, Lord, I need you. I want to do this well. And the only way I would do it well is with him, because on my own, I wouldn't have, and I would have been embers, So yeah, that was a big shift for me when you said that.
Well, he sustains us.
Yeah.
He doesn't just call us to something and then watch us struggle. Like he is our sustainer. We have to let him be. Like, whether the answer is to do less things, whether the answer is to do different things, whether the answer is to do more things. I think what God's after is our heart. Like, I think what God's after is our relationship.
Jen, do you know what just popped in my mind as you were saying that? To circle back to the mountain metaphor, is it's like God is our Sherpa. Like, he is there to help us carry the load and to walk with us up the mountain. Like, we aren't alone just trekking up it. He is there with us and he's helping us carry all the stuff.
And I think we forget that. I think at my moments where I have been the most burnout in life, I feel alone in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny. It's taken us the whole call to get what Megan said in the very first 2 minutes. But the rest of us, it took us a while, Megan, to catch up.
It's okay.
You might just have to edit it out. Just have your first blip.
2 minutes. And
Yeah, make us sound smarter, Megan.
Oh.
Yeah. So I think I know we've ventured from a little bit from Mia. You keep bringing us back to the instructor, but I think it's so important in life in general, but certainly as a yoga instructor, I love your advice about, like, teach as much as you practice. I think that's such a good, like, home base to come back to. And then just remembering, like, just because it starts to feel uncomfortable doesn't mean you need to add to it or take away from it. Like, maybe you just need to sit there for a second. Maybe you need to stop wishing it away. Like, God's got something in it for you.
You got to remember why you're doing it.
That's, I heard a few key takeaways. If I'm trying to do it in my own strength, burnout. If I'm in that uncomfortable spot, examining, if I think it's what I'm experiencing is burnout, and actually it's the Lord asking me to examine the spot and examine what, why am I doing the things I'm doing? And then
that's what I think that's why I put the liminal space and the burnout thing together subconsciously, was that sometimes I think I'm burnt out, but really I'm just trying to avoid an liminal space.
Yeah.
We have to be introspective enough and humble enough to ask ourselves that question, and that in itself is scary sometimes.
And then the other thing is that the getting the refreshment from the source. That was the other takeaway for me. But I also think that we can be good stewards to our sisters and brothers out there when we ask them to do something, letting them know when we ask, hey, it's okay for you to tell me no here. Because there are a lot of people out there who saying no is the hardest thing, and letting them off the hook before they put themselves on.
There's something so freeing. I remember when I first came to work at Holyoke, Brooke and I were talking, and she said, if I ask you to do something, like I remember her saying, like, I don't know all the ins and outs of your job. Like, that's why I hired you to do the job. So if I ask you to do something and it's not something you can get to, or like, you can tell me no, or you can say, great, that's going to be next week. And I really just didn't believe her, if I'm being honest. I was like, yeah, you don't tell your boss no. Like, I would never want to tell her no. And I also remember the first time that I told her no. I mean, I wasn't like, no. I mean, I said, like, I can't get to that. It's going to be a couple weeks or whatever it was. I don't remember what the task was, but I remember saying it, and I remember being very anxious about saying it because in my Enneagram 3-ness, I would like to do all the things that are asked of me and do them better than what you asked. But so I remember saying no and then waiting for like the response of like, what's going to happen now? Like, I'm sure she didn't want to hear that. And she said, okay. I was like,
because we build it in our own head. We build that.
I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't say like, okay, so you can get it to me tomorrow. Okay. And I remember like sitting with that and thinking, she allowed me to say no. She told me that I could say no. Then she allowed me the space. And then when I did, she didn't make me feel bad for it.
Yeah.
She didn't. So how we respond when people tell us no matters. How we respond to that. I think that was such a beautiful example to me because it's not the example that most of life gives when I say no.
Well, a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, in my experience, in ministry specifically, when you say no, like they take that very personal. Mm-hmm. And it's not personal. I can't. I have a full-time job. I do other things. I say yes to literally everything. But then the one time you give a no, it's like this personal attack. And that.
Here's my thing on that, Megan. As a reformed people pleaser, after it leaves my lips, I have no control over it. I have no control over their reaction, and their reaction is theirs. I cannot give offense. They can only take it. So
yeah, I mean, I enjoy saying no now a lot. So I don't have a problem saying no anymore.
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
It's a good point though, Megan, because it is, as a lot of our instructors are there, a lot of them are here with a ministry heart, the ministry mind. They're working and serving in churches. They're doing that. And that is, people will ask, I don't have money to pay for this class. Can I come for free? I need you to pay for this facility. They'll ask for, can I also do this? Can I use your studio space for this? Like, they'll ask the questions. They'll ask you to do certain things. And that is not true of all ministries. And I think some of that is probably our own stuff that we might bring into it. But I do think that there is something there there's something there with this idea of, oh, well, you're serving. A ministry is exists to serve others, and God calls us to serve each one another. And I think that we get that really messed up sometimes. I think we get it really. It gets really icky sometimes, and I think some people say no really well, and some people say no not well. Some people say no because they genuinely need to, and some people say no because they're lazy. But to Mia's point, we have to be able to be plugged in enough to our power source, plugged in enough to our relationship with Christ to know with confidence what he has for us and what is not for us, and then stand in that as gracefully and lovingly as we can.
Is that your prop, Jen?
That is my prop. I'm so glad that I don't have to think of another one, because, yeah. So we will wrap us up because we've gone long today. I think great discussion, though. So we tie up every episode with a prop, something you can take off your map. So I just gave mine. Who else has a prop for us today?
Again, I would say that when we ask, doing so with the servant's heart, where we're not obligating or making somebody feel obligated to say yes. That's the kindest thing I think we can do when we ask somebody to do something, is to do it where we encourage a no if that's their response, and applaud a no.
I would say mine is what I said earlier of like being aware of your tells, like being aware of why you're doing something, the posture you're doing it from, being aware of the things you do when you start to get burnt out. So I was saying like doom scrolling or binge watching a show. And there are times, I remember in one of my classes, and I can't remember if I've talked about this on here or not, but one of my teachers in one of the meditation programs I was going through talked about how I at that time was living in a house with toxic mold, and I was really, really sick. And there were days where I could not meditate. And she goes, that's okay. What you need to do is ask yourself, what is the most compassionate thing in any given situation? Is the most compassionate thing to do my practice? Is the most compassionate thing to watch puffy videos on YouTube? Is the most compassionate thing to, with awareness, go binge watch a show for an hour and a half or whatever? Eat the ice cream, whatever the thing was, right? Like doing things with awareness. Like you could say yes to something that like maybe I don't have the capacity for that, but you are aware rather than being compulsive, rather than being reactionary. So just, I would say my actual prop would be to learn to cultivate awareness of where you're actually at, of your tells, of your motivation, and of your reaction or choosing. A reaction or choice would maybe be a better way of saying that.
Okay, my prop is to pretty much what I said a bit ago, but remember your why. I think for me, to remember my why, like why I became a yoga instructor in the first place, if I have it visually, like write it down on a post-it, it's on a post-it on my wall, why I am a yoga instructor, why I went through the 200-hour training. And if you can remember why you do it, I think it will always bring you back. Like if you're getting to a point of burnout, pointing back to your why will bring you back to your source.
I love that. Good job, ladies. Good discussion. Shall I close this in prayer?
Yeah.
Lord, thank you. Thank you for a hard conversation. Thank you for thank you for the uncomfortableness. Thank you for the conviction, for the sticky topics. Thanks for the mix-up of two words that lead us to think deeply and intentionally and meaningfully and ultimately drive us back to you, Father. Thank you for letting this hour be one that grows us. I pray that you help it grow our listeners. And we just thank you. We thank you for this get to. Lead us out, Father, in your name. Amen.
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 Thanks so much for joining us today. We have loved getting to chat with you. Be sure to like and follow us on Instagram at TUYM Podcast. Subscribe on our YouTube channel and listen wherever you love to listen to podcasts.